we have a podcast.
Diving deep into all things Texans, both on and off the field. Here's Sean Pendergast and Pro Football Hall of Famer, the General, John McClain. Welcome to Houtopia.
All right, so that's the longest we've ever gone in one stretch on baseball in the podcast. That was fun. Congrats to Dusty Baker on a great run as the Astros manager. All right, John, you ready to do a pregame six-pack for this Panthers-Texans game coming up? Number 1 versus number 2. Draft picks, not teams in the NFL, but Bryce Young versus C.J. Stroud. Of all the games on the schedule, this was definitely one, John, before the season that we put the circle around because of this quarterback matchup. Little did we know the Texans would be a relevant team in the playoff hunt in the AFC. You ready to do a little pregame six-pack action, my friend?
Let's do it.
All right, so we pick 6 people, storylines, position groups, however we want to do it, but 6 things that are going to most highly impact the Texans game on Sunday. The Texans a 3.5-point favorite right now in Charlotte this Sunday against the Panthers. You can hear the game at noon on Sports Radio 610. John, you go first, as always, in our pregame six-pack.
First, remind the listeners and viewers what happened the last time they were favored on the road.
Last time the Texans were favored on the road would be week 14 of 2020 in Chicago against the Bears, quarterbacked by Mitchell Trubisky, and the Bears won 36-7 that day. Texans were favored by 1 point.
Yes, they cannot have that kind of performance.
No.
I was listening to NFL Radio, and Charlie Weiss, one of their experts, picked the Panthers because he said they have to win this game. They have to go all out. You know, they're an underdog at home. It's always an embarrassment. But I'm going to say this. They got to get a better pass rush. They're getting pressure. Will Anderson Jr. gets great pressure, but they have the fewest sacks in the NFL, which is amazing because usually they're +6 in turnover differential, tied for second. Usually when you're that good in turnover differential, you're getting sacks and strip sacks, and they're not. So Will Anderson Jr. and Jonathan Grenard got to get to Bryce Young, not just to put pressure on him, but get him down. They have to do their part on defense to make sure that Bryce Young does not outplay C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, they need to pulverize Bryce Young. Bryce Young needs to feel this game afterwards in his tiny little bird frame. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
A sparrow.
Yes.
That's terrible.
A hummingbird. All right.
Coming from 2 guys on a soda weight loss program.
No kidding. Hey, that's right. If Will can't get him on the ground, you and I will come in and do the Yokozuna bonsai drop on him. There you go. There's a lot less of us to love now, people, just so you know, than there was for me a few years ago and for John a few months ago. All right, my first one here in the six-pack, number 2 overall, is the Texans, the wide receiving core, but particularly the return of Tank Dell. Tank Dell's coming back this week. Of course, he was concussed in the Atlanta game. He missed the New Orleans game. They knew he'd be good to go for this game, especially with the bye week in between. I think having Tank Dell back there he's the one guy that really opens things up for the Texans. He gets open himself. And this is a horrible, horrible Panthers secondary when it comes to covering wide receivers. They have among the worst stats in the league when it comes to passer rating and yardage generated. Passer rating, targeting wide receivers, and yardage generated by wide receivers per game. The Panthers are among the worst in the league. And, John, these are their backups. The Panthers secondary is in the same condition the Texans offensive line was like 2 weeks into the season. They are playing street guys right now. So C.J. Stroud should be able to light it up throwing to Nico Collins and Tank Dell on Sunday. So that's my first one. I think this could be a fireworks display passing wise for the Texans.
The offensive line has got to control Brown and Burns, who are 2 really good pass rushers from inside and outside. Say this about the receivers. We were worried about it so much early. Besides Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown came back last week, had a 31-yard catch. Yep. Dalton Schultz is now making big catches in every game, especially down the middle. Xavier Hutchinson carried twice on reverses that Tank Dell was doing, and he ran them better than Tank Dell. So I think Ben McDaniels, the wide receivers coach, is doing a terrific job with these guys, and then Bobby Slowick's making good calls for them. So I think they'll get the ball to Tank as a runner and as a passer, and I would send him deep right off the bat to make sure the Panthers know he's capable of doing that.
I like that. I like where your head's at on that, John. What's your next one in the six-pack here?
2 weeks to prepare because of the bye week. The running game has not been good. It's actually better than it was this time last year. I looked it up. About 3 yards better, even though it's terrible.
Wow.
And so I think with 2 weeks to get ready, we're going to see Dameon Pierce have his best game. Devin Singletary will have another good game after the last one in which he was the leading rusher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to see the running game going against the 31st run defense. They're giving up 140, I think, 7 yards a game on the ground. They have to be able to run against the Panthers. They're going to have an intact offensive line for the third week in a row, I believe. Who's playing left guard?
For the Texans?
Yeah. Is Josh Jones? No, Titus. I'm sorry.
It's been Titus, yeah.
Yeah. So I keep thinking, would they put Josh Jones there like they did at one point and move Titus back to right tackle? But if they keep it the way it was with Titus and Fant, third week in a row, so they're getting some continuity. So I look for the running game to be best at any time this season.
Okay, so John, if my prediction with my first six-pack entry comes true, and yours just now comes true, the Texans are going to basically put up about 700 yards on the Panthers.
Throw the ball for about 40 minutes.
Yeah. Like, well, you've got them with $150 rushing, and I've got CJ throwing for 300 in a fireworks display. So they're going to get, and they could too. They could get 450, 500 yards of offense against this defense. It's not a good defense, this Panthers.
Wouldn't that be fun to watch?
Oof, you got that right, my friend. All right, my next one, John, the Texans linebacking crew, and particularly covering tight ends. They've been among the worst in the league in covering tight ends so far this season. We saw it probably most magnified against the Falcons in week 5, where their tight ends went for, I think, 14 catches for $175. They couldn't stop Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts. Michael Pruitt even got involved with a play in that game. And then last week they got eaten up by Taysom Hill, in kind of, short yardage, move the chain situation. So the Texans linebacking crew, I've been telling people all week, like if Hayden Hurst is available on your fantasy free agency wire, pick him up, because if the trend holds, Hayden Hurst of the Panthers is going to have his best game of the year, because the Texans give up a ton of yards and catches. And I think part of that probably, John, is the bend but don't break philosophy. That interior, that middle part of the field, D'Amico has typically left open in his defense, because D'Amico seems perfectly happy giving up 7 or 8 yard catches if it means that the safeties and the linebackers get to abuse a guy in that kill zone right there. The problem for the Texans is that they haven't been able to contain that position the last couple of weeks. The tight ends have been making those intermediate catches, but they've been productive plays. So control the tight end, because I think this is a wide receiver wise. I think this is a group that the Texans can control in the secondary, but don't let the tight ends beat you in this game.
They better at some point. Now, teams move the ball down the field. The Texans have given up 18.8 points a game. That's 7th in the NFL. They also are 11th in red zone defense. They're still awful in red zone offense. But so they do give up yards, but then they get so much better when they get closer to the end zone. My next one is going to be special teams, because even though you'd like to think they blow them out like they did in Jacksonville, it's more likely to come down to the end and have a chance to win it with a field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn, who's been fantastic. He's only missed 1 field goal this season. He's perfect on extra points. I think, again, because of problems in the red zone on offense, he's going to have a lot of field goal opportunities, and he's going to have a chance to be the difference in the game. You said the spread now is up to 3.5 points. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it doesn't come down to a Fairbairn kick. They have an advantage in the kicking game. Their opponents' punt returns, and this includes Ty Zettner, opponents' punt returns are only 4.8 yards, which makes the Texans second in the NFL. So they're not giving up field position on punts, and that has a lot to do with Frank Ross and his strategy. So I think special teams in general and kicking game in particular.
I just checked. It's actually down to 3 now, the spread on the game. So that half point's a big half point in a game that could get decided by 3 points. So Texans a 3-point favorite as of 24 minutes into this podcast here. My last one, John, is not necessarily a player or a position group. I'm just anxious to see how the Texans come out in this game in the first quarter and what their energy level is in this game. And here's why. This is the first time, as you pointed out, or had me point out a few minutes ago, this is new territory for the Houston Texans and this group of Texans where they're the ones with the target on their back. They're the favorite in this game, and they're the favorite in what hostile environment, maybe overstating it. I don't know if Carolina is viewed as one of those places it's really hard to go play, but it is a road game. So it's a road game. They're favored in this game. They've had a whole bye week to sit there and if they're on the internet, read about how surprisingly awesome they've been over the last 4 weeks of the season. I'm very intrigued to see how the Texans handle the plethora of press clippings that are available out there for them to read about how good they've been so far this year, because the human tendency is that when you read that stuff, it injects complacency. So how well does DeMeco Ryans do, handling the bye week and the extra time to prepare? Hopefully that manifests itself in the run game. Like you said, that they fixed some technical things with the team, but how has he managed those 2 weeks with this team in terms of motivation and making sure that I'm optimistic that it's going to look good. DeMeco strikes me as a guy who has his team's attention first and foremost and is a very good communicator. So I'm optimistic it'll be good. I'm just intrigued because it's been a long time since we've been in this sort of territory with this group of Texans.
They should be 4-2. They should have won that game in Atlanta. There's no reason they shouldn't win this game in Carolina. They have committed the fewest turnovers in the NFL thanks to CJ Stroud. And even though they don't get a lot of turnovers, that's why they're +6. I'll tell you something that you can look up, not right now, but I'll be interested in is, okay, we know the last time they were favored on the road and what happened. When's the last time they were favored on the road and covered? I'm guessing 2019.
No. 3 weeks before that, they were favored Thanksgiving Day in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
They were favored.
I didn't realize they were favored. That was that game. Watson was just fantastic.
Yeah, well, John, and that was the game. J.J. Watt had a pick 6 in that game also. Like, that's what's weird about that season. It just goes to show you, like, and you can see why Bill O'Brien got fired. He got fired 4 games into that season. But that was a team, the Texans, that even though at that juncture in the season, when they're playing Detroit on Thanksgiving Day and they're playing Chicago in Week 14, I mean, at that point, the Texans are probably 4-7 or 4-8 or maybe 3-7 on the season, because I think that was their 4th win, that Detroit game. They were still getting the level of respect that they're a favorite on the. You're a favorite on the road against anybody, and you're 3 or 4 games below 500 in November, then clearly there's an issue going on with the coaching, because they don't view your talent level as one that should be losing all these games. But yeah, it was to answer your question, long way to answer your question, but it was 3 weeks before that on Thanksgiving Day in Detroit. They were favored and they won 41-25.
They don't give a damn about covering in Carolina. They just want to win.
John, I'll tell you this before we get to our For Real or Fugazi. We had Kyle Bailey on our show this morning. Seth and I did. Kyle does the afternoon show on WFNZ in Charlotte. That's our sister station, our Audacy station in Charlotte. And Kyle's a great host. I was on his show yesterday, and he was with us this morning. And I asked him, the very last question I asked him, John, I said, would Panther fans rather have Bryce Young throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a losing effort, or have Carolina win the game? He didn't even let me finish the question. He's like, yeah, the Bryce Young. Yes, we just want Bryce Young to look good. We don't care if we win the game, because it doesn't impact them. They don't have their, like the winning and losing thing. Like they're not going to make the playoffs. There's no incentive. There's no incentive to lose, I guess, because Chicago has their pick. So the whole winning and losing thing for them is kind of, they just need Bryce Young. They just need to feel like they have a quarterback, And so they're not as focused on a win in this game as they are making sure. They'd rather have Bryce Young win the personal battle with CJ Stroud than the Panthers win the game against the Texans.
Yeah, Stroud would obviously give up that personal battle for another win.
Stroud would throw for 112 yards and 3 picks if the Texans won the game 13-12.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? 100%. That's what I love about him. All right. What's your prediction on the game, John?
I'm picking the Texans to win this game 23-20.
I think they're going to score 30 points in this game. I'm going to go.
I hope you're right. Jacksonville all over again.
I think they're going to score a lot of points, John. I think this is a secondary that can be had, and I think the extra week off, to your point, is going to help the running game. So I'm going to say I'm going to go 31-19.
Ooh, I hope you're right. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. Whole lot of fun. Then 4-3 going into a home game against the Bucs, and then we're done with
Lost to the Bills.
Yeah, and then we're done with the NFC South, and now it's all AFC games the rest of the way. That's crazy fun. All right, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.